Welcome back to Two Lads, One League. That is Matt. I am Nick, and this is where we talk about all things the Premier League. On today's episode, we're discussing the transfer window for three Premier League sides. Our team, Tottenham Hotspur. We're going to dive into Aston Villa, and we're going to talk a little bit about Newcastle. Please like, comment, subscribe for all of the content you're going to see from us, which is weekly. If you got to see any of the last episode, which just came out, we talked a little bit about the transfer window with Manchester United and Liverpool, as well as the reactions to the World Cup final. But now that the World Cup is officially over, we are fully diving in to the Premier League, and it only makes sense to talk about the transfer window because that is where we are. So, of course, it only makes sense that we talk about our team, which I have the hat on, Tottenham, and they have had a crazy summer by probably any team standards. And so, do you want initial thoughts here, Matt? And then we can kind of dive into the ins and outs of who they've brought in and out so far.
I think it's appropriate just to sit, take a step back from just from not only being a Tottenham fan, but also from the perspective of all the other fans out there for other clubs. We're a team that finished now 17th 2 years in a row.
Yikes.
Barely got past, I should say, relegation the second season, but it's very telling because there's a lot of history I feel like that goes into this team prior to those two seasons. I mean, back to Poch era, you got a lot that you can kind of go off of. So it's very interesting just kind of seeing the downfall that we did have after we reached the Champions League final. One thing I wanted to bring up though was we have been a team that's not necessarily made a huge dent in the market and spent money, nor do we have massive players going out. I mean, I think our biggest sale we've had was Bale back in 2013, and that was 85.5 million at the time. And that was, that's 13 years ago.
Yep.
85 million back then. Today, I don't even know what that would be. If that would be 160 or 200 mil, I don't know. But I think it's something well worth looking at because this, I feel, is the first time Tottenham has really opened the checkbook and like really opened the checkbook. I mean, you're 24 hours, you break the transfer record twice. Previous to that was Tanguy and Ndombele, then, or I guess it was Tanguy, then went to Solanke, and I forget maybe, who was in there or who wasn't, but they're pretty relatively close. So I think there's a lot to talk about and understand prior to the team finishing 17th back to back. And then now I think they finally have got their eyes set on a futuristic path of what they want to see the club do. And, there are small comments, Roberto De Zerbi can say versus what Thomas Frank maybe said at the start, so on and so forth. But I think there's a lot to say behind the position, the
Hmm.
organization within itself, finishing 17th back to back, being able to find the right manager to kind of push them forward. I mean, we've gone through seven managers, I believe, in between uh RDZ and
Oh,
Poch.
yeah.
But I think it's well worth noting that we are not here to mess around anymore. And it's from a fan standpoint, it's so awesome to see because we have seen the such a positive side, great football, from this team back in the day. I remember when we played Real Madrid in the group stage, and heck, we won the freaking group stage. When we That wasn't the year we went to the Champions League final, but it's one of those scenarios where you look back and it's like, man, what are we missing? So it's nice to kind of see there's a lot more I think to go into about the ideology behind the upper management of the club pursuing what the fans want. And it's, I mean, or what's his face? The owner of, or not the owner, Daniel Levy at the time. Sorry, I just couldn't think of his name. He set us up for success, in my opinion. As much as people didn't like him, I didn't like him either because we never spent anything. But now I feel like we are seeing the positive sides to what he did do. On top of the fact we were able to make still a name for ourselves during that period of time. So it's interesting. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are too, because yes, we've spent, north of 250 million or whatever it is, 200 million, when we've never seen that. Heck, 100 million on one player, which we've never done ever in the history of Tottenham. There's, I feel like, a lot to say about the mentality of this club and what the intentions are for this future, not this coming season, but for the next 5 seasons.
Look, I couldn't agree more. At the end of the day, we're a club that I feel like always waits to the last second to spend money and necessarily doesn't spend the right money on the right players. So this has been a beautiful change of pace for our club when it comes to purchasing players. I feel like we are way more active in general in the transfer market than we've ever been. Obviously, we have purchased and spent a lot of money. We're just going to go through like some of those guys. I mean, we've first of all, three free transfers have come in. Martin Dubravka, backup goalkeeper. Marco Senesi, the center back out of from Bournemouth in Argentina, who just played in the World Cup final. Signed him on a free from Bournemouth. And then Andy Robertson, the left back from Liverpool. I mean, everybody knows who Andy Robertson is if you watch the Premier League. Necessarily not going to be any of them may not be starters, but added depth definitely, and that's definitely needed. In terms of the people we've bought Jan-Paul Van Hecke from Brighton for 60 million. Matisse Fernandez from West Ham for up to 99 million, which is crazy. And then Sandro Tonali from Newcastle, for up to 108 million, which again, we've never paid that kind of money for anybody. And so alone we've spent, almost 270 million euros this summer, and we're mid to late July, which is amazing. And in my opinion, a lot of weak points on the Tottenham team last year. There's no denying that. Um, to me, our biggest struggle was I didn't feel like we ever really controlled the games that we competed in, even against the lower teams. And I can't say lower because we're also lower, but like even against some of the teams like Leeds, for example, late in the season, you need to win a game like that, and you just don't have a midfield that can control a game. And that's no dig on João Palhinha because he gave everything he had for that badge, and we still have Bentancur and like Conor Gallagher, like they're still there. That's great, but now we're bringing in like absolute workhorse midfielders who, I mean, Sandro Tonali's a proven midfielder. I mean, he's arguably Italy's best national player. So like this guy is, I mean, these guys have played in the Premier League, which is huge in my opinion. Like at the end of the day, like I'm not, it's kind of weird. Like I'm not a big fan of like buying from leagues outside of the Premier League. Like it's really weird. The adjustment for players, I think, is very difficult when
It
it comes to
is,
the
it
Premier
is,
League.
it is, it is. But only one thing I will mention when it comes to that, Tonali's an example of he came from Brescia and the Serie A, or this, I guess it was Serie B, Serie A. I mean, they're fluctuating from the top and the bottom. But then he gets signed by AC Milan. You're not wrong on what you're saying. I think the statistics prove that a lot of those players that come from outside the Prem that come in and be able to succeed is very, very minimal. And those that do are some of the best players,
Hmm.
aka Salah, and Ali Son, you name the Heung-Min Son, things like people like that, players like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But I will say, from the point you're mentioning, you're not wrong on that. But I think Tonali, at the age he was, kind of molded into the level of the Premier League, which then is at that point, you have nothing to lose. Because if you have a guy that has that potential and ability to be, a top CDM or even an eight at that point, you have almost nothing to lose because they're still learning the basics, crazy to say, the basics of that level of play.
I don't
So
disagree.
I totally see what you're saying, but you get likes of like Di Maria going to United back in the day.
Yeah.
He has that. He's already hit his level. Then he goes to the Premier League, and that doesn't work. So it's so interesting seeing that experience. You're absolutely right with what you're saying, but I will say at a certain age or a younger age, when they do transfer over to the Prem, I think some of those players become some of the best because they play obviously in, I mean, arguably the best league in the
No,
world.
I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. And of course, there's examples from guys coming over from other leagues that are successful. I'm not saying there's not. I just feel like when you're spending a lot of money pressure has risen, and a lot of players to me seem to really struggle under that pressure. The most recent guy I can think of is Florian Wirtz over at Liverpool. Not a great season for the money spent. I mean, obviously, Isak came from Newcastle, but it took him a couple years at Newcastle after he came over from Sociedad to really get his feet wet in the league. And now, I mean, and don't get me wrong, it works. Like Dominic Szoboszlai came over from what, like Leipzig or something? I don't even remember where he
Mhm.
came from, and
Yep, Leipzig,
he was a beast right away. So like, I'm not saying it doesn't work, right?
young,
I'm just saying, yeah, and I'm just saying that like I feel like we see a lot of guys come over from other leagues, and it
right?
takes a second to really get going. So from a Tottenham perspective, I'm happy that the people we have purchased thus far in the summer are dudes from the Premier League because Van Hecke, Brighton, Fernandez, West Ham, yes, they went down, and then Tonali, Newcastle. And then, Andy Robertson, Liverpool, Senesi, Bournemouth, and then Dubravka from wherever he came from, right? And on top of that, for the first time in a long time, like we sold some players, right? Like we sold Luka Vuskovic, and he's only 19, didn't play a single second in a Tottenham jersey. And, we sold him for 54 million euros. So like he wasn't going to play. I watched him in one game in the World Cup against England, and I was like, not ready. Doesn't mean he's not going to be ready. I'm just saying at the time, not ready. We pretty much did a swap for Van Hecke, and now Van Hecke gets to sit in that back line next to his international teammate, Mickey Van de Ven, and that's the center back duo, assuming everybody's healthy, going forward, because Tottenham, from what it sounds like, will sell Christian Romero. And honestly, after the World Cup, I'd sell him too. Like, holy
You know
crap.
what? Let's talk about that real quick. Let's talk about Romero real quick because I saw that he was offered to Chelsea.
Well, go to Chelsea. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a good player. Like he's done great things for our club. I have like no ill will against him, except for when
His
he got
arrogance.
hurt towards the end of last season and he didn't play the rest of the season. He's also super reckless. Everybody knows that about him if you watch the Premier League. I
Yeah.
mean, he's got a decent amount of red cards in his repertoire. And then the whole debacle about him not potentially attending the last game of the season because he's focused on the Argentina national team. He did go to the last game of the season when we stayed up, but there's just a lot of stuff circulating around him. And don't get me wrong, I know these guys love their country more than anything, and that's fantastic. But we weren't at that point of the year where it was time for the World Cup. We were in the heart of the club season where we were struggling, and I feel like he didn't care once he got hurt about the club anymore, and he was just fixated on the World Cup. So just kind of things like that really bother me. Also, I feel like we could sell him for a good fee, probably about the same that we bought Van Hecke for. So at the end of the day, it could just be a swap for swap type of a deal. Um, and look, we need to purchase players in the attacking third. Like, there's no denying that. So
Yeah.
it's a weak attacking third. It was last year. I don't think of course, like I mean, injuries are like nobody. I mean, we've had the worst luck with the injury bug. Like, Kudus, hopefully he's healthy. Kulusevski, dare I say, maybe, hopefully he's healthy. James Madison seems to be healthy. Obviously, Xavi Simmons is not healthy. Um, and then you need guys like a Richarlison or a Solanke. We spent a lot of money on Solanke. He's got to step up. Matisse Tell played pretty well towards the end of the season, but like nobody else could play at that spot. So like somebody had to play. But he also made mistakes and he's also young. So like a guy's got to be given a chance and a little bit of wiggle room there. But in terms of the transfer market, we sold some guys, some dudes go back on loan. We've made about almost 100 million euros, but we spent, 270 million euros. So at the end of the day, we're not a club that's going to net gain and make money over the summer. We're spending, especially when you do 17th back-to-back years in the table.
And I'm going to mention this too about the outgoings because a lot of the outgoings have been guys under 20 years old.
Yep. Saw that.
Literally, you got, like you said, Vuskovic was 19. You've got Alejo Veliz, who was like probably 21 or 20, but
Yeah.
he barely played,
Mm-mm.
the Argentinian. And then you've got um, Alfie Devine, Tyan Thompson. Um, did I say Will Lancashire?
Will Lancashire, yeah, just
Will
happened
Lancashire. So
today the day we're
three
recording.
youth players, arguably two of them that have been on loan in other championship and League One clubs. But end of the day, you've got Tyan Thompson, who $8 million, 4 million in fixed and four in add-ons from a youth academy player to United. We'll take it. Sure. Have them. Alfie Devine, he tried to make a name for himself in the senior squad a couple times, but 5.5 million for a team in Preston, take it. And then you've got Will Lankshire, who's got 10 guaranteed, 10 in add-ons with a 20% sell-on clause. I think he will be the one that, out of all of them, even Luka Vuskovic, I guess you can maybe put him in there. Because I think Luka will be definitely a sleeper for next season. I think he'll do really well for Brighton.
Probably.
But Will Lankshire, I think, is going to be a sleeper like a Liam Delap for sure. Someone like that
That'd
who
be
will make
great. I mean, there's other
will make a
ball.
name
Like,
for themselves. Maybe 7, 8, 9 goals in the. Well, I guess they're in the championship last season or next season, but this coming season in the championship, I think he could definitely put up 10 for sure for Middlesbrough. I mean, they're a good team for sure, and depending on what they can do in the future and them getting promoted, I mean, we also have a 20% selling clause on him as well. So it's interesting seeing those guys go and us really focused on Archie Gray and Mikey Moore.
hmm
And those are the two youth guys that have been, or not youth guys, I should say, but younger lads on the team that are actually on the senior squad. And it looks like those two are the ones that are going to be putting into
I hope they do.
getting some playing time because they're, I mean, absolutely prolific players and for their age, especially too. So it's going to be nice to kind of see that. But we got 8 plus 5.5 plus 10 guaranteed. So you could say 20, 20 plus 8 plus 5.5 for youth academy players.
Yeah.
And then a 20% selling clause. And then on top of that, a player like you said, we haven't even played yet. And don't get me wrong, Vuskovic back in preseason of Thomas Frank looked incredible.
He
I mean,
did.
I was like, this guy's going to be, he could play striker. The man's got so many goals. And I mean, he had two in 2 games, I believe it what it was. But it just, you could tell that he's going to be a good player.
Yeah.
But the moment we're in right now, that's not what we need. We have tried that we tried that strategy back in the day, getting the youth side, seeing what we can do with the youth side, but that's not us. That's not us as a club. If we're bringing in almost a $500 million just from revenue of the stadium itself, that's not our this shouldn't be our sole focus in terms of making profits on the youth side. Maybe in the future, having a little clause here and there to be able to match certain rights, fair enough. But we have the ability and the money to go out there and go buy like a Tenali, like we just did. So it's a completely different in terms of the mentality behind this club. And I
Yeah.
never, as a supporter since 2013, I have not seen anything like this from the standpoint of letting youth players go for these types of fees. But in addition, also kind of keep it in the back of the head, like, you got other clubs out there that have selling clause to these clubs. City
hmm
does it the most. City does it the most, I swear.
Yeah, they know what they're
And
doing.
look how well they're doing. Exactly. So something finally is getting caught here from upper management, which is exciting as a fan because what I'm seeing right now is good business. When I say good business, I don't want viewers to think, oh well, you're not making profit. That's not our goal here. You got to understand the goal here for us is to make a difference on the pitch. And obviously, right now we haven't played a game, but the from a paper standpoint of our lineup of what we could be with everyone healthy, it looks like some of the best clubs in the Prem, and you can't argue that. I mean, everyone's back last season, the season 4. Tonali is one of the best CDMs of the Premier League, and I swear when he goes to Tottenham, it's like, oh, what a horrible signing. He's not worth the money, and I'm like, I love it. Keep it coming, because you can't deny statistics, facts. Players like a Declan Rice, a Tenali, an Elliot Anderson, an Isak, Ekatike, players like that really do make a difference with the money that is spent with them. So I'm intrigued to kind of see what the intentions of this club's going to be, not just this year, but next year. Because one of the biggest things that has stuck with me ever since Roberto kind of signed his contract was Thomas Frank signed it and goes, one thing is guaranteed, we will lose football matches. And I don't know why you ever would say that because yes, that's a given. That's a proof in geometry is what I call it. That's going to happen. I mean, it's inevitable. Thanks for telling me something that's going to happen. Give me some confidence that the team that you are going to put on the pitch is going to give it all. And possibly, if you have the right mentality and the right kind of coaching desire to influence these players, that's what Roberto comes in. The first thing he says is this team is challenging for the Premier League. This team is challenging for the Premier League. I don't think Thomas ever said something like that. But whether that's true or not, it puts an ideology with these players. You guys are good enough to be able to be top of the top with everybody else. You have to believe. And we started seeing that ever since he came in after the last 4 or 5 games. And some of the players even said it. They just, the manager, Roberto, came up and just talked about the things I was good at, and it got me confidence. And Conor Gallagher is a great example. I mean, I don't know how someone could have such depleted confidence leaving Atletico, coming into the Prem, trying to make a name for himself for the England squad, and is not only not playing well, but with a team that's playing like dog crap. There's not much you can do. And then when you get someone right that just the smallest amount of belief, hey, you're good enough. I would have put you in this position if I didn't think so. Just play your style. It'll work out. It's all going to work out. Sure enough, look what happens. So that freedom, I think, is a level of coaching that's very, very critical to some of these players. And it's interesting now seeing what Roberto's done with the incomings of the players that Tottenham's purchased, but also as well why he's let go of certain players.
I I think you hit a nail on the head, is what one would say. I mean, that pretty much is, yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. And at the end of the day, we're spending the money because the manager's being backed and people are figuring out that we need to do a different way of business. And so that's how we're doing that going forward. And look, we only have what, 10 minutes left. And so, with the whole goal of diving into to Villa and Newcastle, and I think we still will. I think we will do a little bit of a final recap here with Tottenham. Maybe start jumping into some basic conversation regarding Villa and Newcastle, but then we'll take what we can call a slight break and come right back and record the rest of it. So it'll be one full episode with a slight break in between. So, look, my whole thoughts on the Tottenham stuff. The last 2 seasons have been abysmal. They've been unacceptable, and the transfer window, we're showing a different side, and we're showing a side that, like, look, we're trying to win now, and we're not trying to prep for the future. And I was done with the prep for the future, and frankly, it wasn't even working, obviously. So, and that's no dig on even the guys that we were keeping, right? Like an Archie Gray or a Papsar or whoever else. It's not about that. Like even a Matisse Tell, like at the end of the day, like we need some dudes that are win now type of players. And those guys just aren't yet. Like they just need time. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially when you're in a big club. When you're out of some other clubs, maybe like a Leeds or like a Brighton or some of those other clubs, that's when, there's a little bit of room for you to play more, right? But not with Tottenham. So we'll see what they do with the rest of the summer. Obviously, they need to sign some players in the attack. They've been linked with a couple guys who actually knows what all that comes about. They've been linked with Savinho from Man City. That tends to be the name that continues to pop up every time I see something. Um, I feel like they're asking a lot for him, for a guy that really didn't even play last year for Man City. But look, we'll see what happens. Who knows? I mean, some of these guys are coming out of nowhere, right? The Morgan Rogers to Chelsea came out of nowhere. We always thought Arsenal, like, you never know. I mean, Somerville from West Ham, everybody thought, he was definitely going to stay in the Prem. Man U was really a target, the team to beat with that. And now he's going to Al Hilal over in Saudi.
And do you see how much?
A ton of money.
55 plus 10 in add-ons.
That's insane. And he's not worth that. But somebody's willing to spend that, then spend
Think
that.
about this real quick. I don't know. I'm not trying to divert, but this real quick. Leeds sell Archie Gray to us for 40, no selling clause. Somerville they sell to West Ham for I don't know how much. Maybe it was 30, 35. I could be wrong. Maybe. I don't know.
It was
No
about that. It was
selling
about
clause.
that.
No
Yeah.
selling clause.
Well, yeah.
Just
I
think about
mean,
though
let's be real
the
though. Like, if West Ham didn't even get relegated this year, then he'd still be there. Like, it's just the circumstances. Look, we have to sell,
true,
especially
true.
now that Jared Bowen's announced that he's staying at West Ham. Like, they have to, they don't have money. Like, they literally have to sell these guys. They're lucky.
Well, they got their money
Tottenham,
now.
they're lucky
They just
Tottenham
got
and Al Hilal come in and be like, look, we'll give you all this money for your guys.
yep.
I mean, it's crazy. And they'll sell some other guys. They definitely will. There'll be some other guys that are
Who
gone.
do you well, that may be a different story. Never mind.
So at the end of the day, happy with where Tottenham's at right now. Obviously, really excited to watch some of these guys. Actually, first preseason game, I think, Matt, from when we're recording this, it's tomorrow. So we have
Oh,
preseason game tomorrow.
preseason. Yes. Tomorrow we play MK
Yeah.
Dons at
And then
noon.
we're a month from the regular season starting, August 22nd. So super excited stuff with Tottenham. What we're gonna do now is we only have about 6 minutes left on this current Zoom call, so why not just set up another one for to start in 4 minutes from now? We'll jump on that. We'll talk Villa, Newcastle. Probably won't even take the whole time there, and then we'll piece these together for your whole full episode. But we will pick up on Villa and Newcastle right after this break. All right, we're back. Short break, commercial break, whatever you want to say. Not sponsored by anybody, so I guess it really isn't a commercial. We're moving on from Tottenham because we talk about them all day. And so we are going to shift focus to what I find to be two of the more interesting teams when it comes to the transfer market so far this summer in Aston Villa and Newcastle. But first, we're going to start with Aston Villa. And they're kind of a whirlwind of a summer so far. Very reluctant to sell. From what we've seen, they have to sell. They need to balance some books. However, they have spent some money. We'll start with the sales side. Matt, obviously the biggest news, Morgan Rogers leaving Villa, going to Chelsea. The day we were recording this, literally just signed. It's been announced for 137 million euros. Not the only big name leaving Villa. Yuri Tielemans, his contract being bought out, or his release clause being bought out by Manchester United for 41 million euros. He is signed and it's sealed and delivered, all that fun jazz, and has been announced with United. So Morgan Rogers, Yuri Tillmans, also Daniel Malen has left. He's headed over to, I believe, Roma, maybe, for just north of 25 million euros. And then they've also sold some other guys in the teens, and they've sold almost 230 million. They've sold 230 million euros worth of players. They have bought some. More recently, the Johan Manzambi, hope I said that right, the guy from Switzerland who had a great World Cup, just brought him for up to 70 million euros. And then they just announced João Gomes from Wolves for
Gomez.
40 million euros. And then some other guy I've never heard of for 5.5 million euros for, just south of 120 million euros in purchases. They've made 100 million, which is crazy, Matt.
It is, but they still got to replace Morgan Rogers.
Yeah, dude,
Because
mileage is all over the place.
Manzambi is not a replacement for Morgan Rogers. Manzambi is going to be a replacement for that midside middle. I also think he's going to. It's Aston Villa is an interesting story right now because take their starting lineup. Okay, you got Ollie Watkins up top. Who's sitting right under Ollie Watkins in your opinion? It's been what, McGinn? No,
It's been
McGinn's played the
it's
eight.
Buendia.
Buendia, yes. And then you've got Morgan. Well, I thought Morgan Rogers played in the middle.
I think he was left wing.
Was he left side or right side? Because I
Yeah.
know at Chelsea he was looking to maybe play on the left side, but he put it this way: Morgan can play any of those positions. Um, they're an interesting side because they also lost Lucas Digne to PSG. So their backup left back is, or their starting left back's gone. I'm assuming now Ian Matson's going to start there, which is a great purchase from them in the past from Chelsea, or Dortmund. Now I think about it, maybe it was Dortmund. Yeah, it was
It was
Dortmund.
Dortmund. He went from
It was
Chelsea to
Dortmund.
Dortmund. Yeah.
That's what it was. But they're also looking at Estupiñán from Milan, which is interesting. That's also an old Brighton player. So you look at that side. Their center backs are going to be Pau Torres still in Consa. And then your right side's probably going to be Matty Cash, is what I'm assuming, unless it's going to be someone different. I don't know.
It'll be
But
Matty
then
Cash.
you got to look at two. Yeah, you got to look at two now. They've got Onana and McGinn. McGinn's also that player that they have to find a replacement for because he is getting old. But think about a McGinn and the position he runs and plays, and then think about that position amongst all the other Premier League teams and how much he makes an impact for that position is critical.
It's interesting with Villa. Like, that's a good
So,
team. It's a well-coached team. Like, I mean, you're
did you see
right.
the likes? Did you see the likes of Emery looking at Nicholas Jackson?
I did see that.
Because they used to, I guess, partnership back in the day. I partnership may not be the right terminology, but back in the day with Villarreal and Emery, the starting striker at the time was Nicholas Jackson before he went to Chelsea
Yep.
for 35 million. So it's interesting to see that because I think Nicholas Jackson could be incredible in the Premier League. I think he could be really good. He needs to be in the right system, the right coach, and he needs consistent playing time. Um, but you also have the likes too of um, Alejandro Garnacho to replace Morgan Rogers. And a lot of people look at that and they think, oh, that's a stupid signing. That's stupid. Why would you do that? And I'm going to be devil's advocate because from a player with that, think of what Garnacho has gone through the last 3 years. I'm obviously not a Premier League player, but the best terminology I can put to kind of summarize everything has been a absolute crap show for him.
Yeah, it has.
Ever leaving United, I thought he was decent, a good backup at United. I thought he
He
was
kind of
fine.
did
I
for
thought he was good.
himself.
Coming from the youth academy. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, he's got a lot to learn. He is Argentinian, so he's got that little flair maybe to him, or that expectation of, hey, he's Argentinian.
Yeah.
Fair enough, whatever. Leaves there to go to Chelsea. Fluke of a signing. I don't know what that was. Whatever. So be it.
Made no
He
sense.
made a decision to go. Accept. Fine. So be it. But from that standpoint of Unai Emery finding a replacement, I don't think Garnacho is that far off of a good replacement for him at the moment. Because
The
you got to
thing,
think. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
no, the thing is, like, Chelsea's going to make their money back on him if he does go
Easy.
to Villa. Like, and he didn't do anything for Chelsea last season, but Villa has the money to spend. Now, granted, still got to balance some books, and there's rumors of some
Right.
other pretty big names for Villa leaving, like
Right.
Emiliano Martinez, for example.
That's another one.
Ezri Konsa is now rumored with Arsenal now that we've had the injury to Saliba. All of a sudden, there's some guys that are like,
I did
ooh,
not see
like
that.
Villa's kind of got to sell potentially. Let's see like who they're willing to sell and kind of see where they're at. Obviously, Tielemans can't do anything about Morgan Rogers. A number like that, you just for a club like Villa, you have to accept something like that. They made
Well,
a
but
hundred million
plus
on
too,
him.
Nick, they needed the money. They were
Well,
all
right.
they were getting fined because they were not in the right financial play. And it's interesting because you look at that and they sell Grealish for loads of money.
Yeah.
Now they sell Morgan Rogers for almost, the same price plus half. Um, and Tillman's for 41 million is a great sale. You've had him
Absolutely.
for so long.
At that
So
age, yeah.
yeah, so you look at like one of the questions I wanted to ask you is why I'm bringing this up is out of everything and hard it's probably hard to answer this now. But with all of the departures that Aston Villa's had, assuming they may not bring in players to compensate for the departures, they may not be as good, of course, because it is the Prem. Where do you think Aston Villa finishes?
And I'll preface it with saying this. There's also rumors of like Ollie Watkins kind of unsettled and maybe leaving too. And it's just like some of these rumors like could be things, right? Some could not be things, right? But in my opinion, they've already lost their best player. They've lost maybe their anchor and one of their workhorses outside of John McGinn. That is Yuri Tielemans. The defense is still kind of the defense. Obviously, Luca Digny's gone. Matson will be a fine replacement there. Um, Villa to me is a 5 to 8 team in terms of the table.
I was going to
Um,
say top eight.
they're
So
not
perfect.
gonna, in my opinion, they are not gonna be able to compete as of today. They could sign a bunch, who knows, right? As of
But aren't
today,
they in Champions League?
I think so, which will be harder for them because again, it's that same conversation we had last episode. If people listen to that episode with the sense of like the Sun, we barely touched on it, and it wasn't part of the topics, but we were kind of all over the place. And it's the same idea with Sunderland and Brighton, and these other teams who are going to compete in Europe next season that are not used to this. Now, Villa is kind of used to this. They've played in Europe. I think Palace is in Europe too, right? Because they won the Europa League. No, they won the
Hmm.
Conference League. So these teams Villa, I think, will be fine, but they'll have to put out their best 11 in the Champions League, whereas in the Europa League, you get away with playing some backups because the competition's not nearly as
But
strong.
but but what do you do with your day in and day out of the Prem?
No, I know. It's interesting to see what they'll have to do because you can't necessarily put your strongest 11 out every weekend in the Prem, especially when you play on a Saturday and you got a game on a Tuesday. If your game on a Tuesday is against Bayern Munich in the Champions League, well, you want your strongest 11 against Bayern Munich in the Champions League.
Well, this is interesting. We're talking about this because I think Emiliano Martinez is a very critical point for that whole squad.
Yeah.
And if he's 7-8 million to Juventus or whatever it may be, fine, whatever. But you cannot buy somebody with that mentality. At least I don't know a goalkeeper right now that's got a very similar Martinez mentality. Cocky, I'm in between the sticks, get by me. If you score, okay, fair enough. I'll give you that one. But on a level of a goalkeeper, it's interesting because at the end of the day, the striker should score, whether it's a PK, one on one, whatever the case may be. And there's flukes that goalkeepers make, fine. Martinez, though, World Cup winner, Europa League winner, has naturally just been incredible in between the sticks and commands a defense. And someone with that mentality leaving will not only diminish the goalkeeper side, but think about what who he talks to on a daily basis on a game. Your two center backs, your outside backs, understanding the play, bringing somebody else in. You have to almost replace him with like a Mike Mangon or how you pronounce like someone who is or like a Sommer or another one. I mean, I would say Neuer would be another one. He's just older. He's not really worth much anymore. Fine, whatever. He's got a year left on the contract at Bayern, so on and so forth. But Martinez kind of fits in that realm of goalkeepers. So that is a whole different mindset and transfer you have to find. Because not only are you looking for someone that can play with their feet, but you need a captain. You need someone to command their defense. And on top of losing Kansa, which I was unaware about to Arsenal, but I did see Saliba being out for what, five months?
It's
Because he got
crazy. It's
surgery. Yeah.
crazy.
So it's interesting to see that, but at the same time, I also really curious to know, I guess, what Emery's thinking on what his mentality is with pursuing this new season, being in Champions League, trying to fight all the domestic trophies, and also staying in the Prem and fighting for the Prem. But not just fighting for the Prem, but you're also trying to stay in the top four wherever you finished. I mean, they've lost a lot, and this is really interesting to look at because you look at Tottenham, and I'm not comparing clubs. That's not the point here. But look at how Tottenham and Daniel Levy foresee the future of where the club could be. Now look at Aston Villa. They have to sell, no different than West Ham, and they're in Champions League, so they got money for finishing top fourth. They're gonna get money next season, yes. That's where you see your accounts receivable if you want to get into business terminology. But ultimately, look at what they have to do in the now versus other clubs. And a lot of that is on the financial side of things, wages, how much you're spending, how much is coming in. So it's interesting to see that because they're going to get to a point, I feel like, where they're going to get stuck. And they may have to use a backup goalkeeper. They may have to go pick up somebody that is, not as good, but meets the valuation of the price tag. And next thing you know, you see the mistakes. I mean, you and I both experienced it with Kingski against Atletico Madrid. Being at that level of a game, you make those types of mistakes. You can't do that. You can't
Nope.
do that, let alone the fact of, he definitely flourished from it and looked like, listen, I can handle this job. But besides that point, Emilio Martinez, I honestly don't think $8 million is enough for him. I would want at least 15 to 20 for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's been rumored
Um,
to Juventus for the whole summer. So, like, it looks
Exactly.
like
And he
he's,
was he was rumored to United last season.
yeah, I mean, it looks like he's on his way out this summer. Like, if he's on his way out, huge hole to fill for Villa, arguably not something they can fill. Um,
who would you think about going after to replace that? From a mentality standpoint of a Martinez level player, unless you don't go for someone like that. But like my hands are up because I don't know what you would do. I don't know what you would, you could go get, look at Suzuki from Japan who just got signed from
Well, look at
Leeds.
what his price tag's at right now.
My point, he was $40 million for a guy that is super young, was on the likes of United back in the day. I don't know if that increased the price tag or what, but you got to look at like if you want a good goalkeeper, you ain't going to be spending 15 million. I mean, Vicario was cheap, but look how crap he was.
Yeah.
So it's like it's
It's an
interesting.
interesting discussion with Villa. Like I thought maybe last year would they'd be a little bit down, and they weren't, and they were good, and they had a good season, and they finished top four or top five or whatever it was to make the Champions League. I think they'll have another good season. I have no reason to believe they're not going to have a good season. However, they've lost some key pieces that were even rumored to leave last summer, but have actually left. And it sounds like there will be some sales for Villa still to happen. And obviously, they'll purchase some players as well. But they've sold two guys in the past, what, 6 to 8 years for over 100 million, and they're
I
still
mean, what are
way
their
off in
biggest
the books.
biggest what are their biggest outgoings?
And they still don't have,
Grealish?
and they're still not financially where they
That's
want to be.
interesting.
They spend a lot of money.
They
They
do.
spend
The
a lot
100%
of
they
money.
do. I mean,
And
and
they kind of spend it on
Emery
like
is that type of player, and
they
that's why
kind
I
of
feel
spend
like
it on
he.
like borderline rejects, like and like not in a bad way, but like Garnacho is an example.
I mean, Matson was an example.
The rumor for Nicholas Jackson, um, some guys they brought in. I mean, like Ian Matson really struggled after kind of going off on Chelsea. Perfect team to go to is always Dortmund if you're young. Didn't really work out. Villa bought him. He
He
hasn't.
played, but he was good at Dortmund. He wasn't bad at
He
Dortmund.
was, and,
He
and no, he
stay
was, he was, and then he comes back to Villa, and he really hasn't done
hasn't
much.
played.
Um, Leon Bailey hasn't done much anymore. Daniel Mullen came in.
Is Bailey even there?
I don't even know if he's there, to be honest with you.
I don't think he is. I think
Eddie
he's
Buendia
left.
struggled, but then he figured it out. He's been much better. Obviously, John McGinn is John McGinn for them. It's just an interesting team. It's an interesting team, full of talent, fully capable. I mean, they don't have Onana. He tore his ACL in the World Cup. He's out.
Well, so you know what? That's interesting you just said that because I just said their 6 and 8 was McGinn and Onana.
Yeah, Onana's out. He tore his
He's
ACL
towards
against the
ACL,
US.
Belgium.
So like
He
he's
did.
out until
You're
the new
absolutely right.
year at the earliest.
So
So like
who puts in that sixth position where
I
you
mean
got McGinn at the
Kamara,
eight?
Boubacar Kamara, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of thoughts with Villa, a lot still to kind of figure out with Villa. Obviously, thank goodness we have a lot of the window, but I think right now as a Villa fan, I think I'd be a little worried.
Shit,
But
if I was a Villa fan, I would put some money into that Morocco six.
yeah, I mean, we'll see. But the thing is,
Who
like, how much
knows?
money do they actually have? Yes,
It's true.
they've made 100 million this summer, but do they actually have that to spend? Because I don't know if they do, if they are trying
Right.
to figure out the books.
Right.
So they're a team that's going to be really interesting to watch as we still have some summer to go. Always a tough team to play against in the Premier League. Um, but that's Aston Villa. Any other thoughts before we move on to our what I think is the most fascinating team when it comes to the transfer market this summer so far?
I know in a way I see what you're saying, but I would argue Aston Villa is neck and neck with them. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's why we're talking about them in this episode.
Yep.
It only makes
Yep.
sense. So like.
Let me guess. The Castle of the New.
Yeah, let's shift over to Newcastle, man, because God, what an interesting summer. I think a lot of people are worried about Newcastle.
Before we go into anything, yes, I hear you. Before we go into anything, they have the one of the greatest English strikers ever to walk this planet, Alan Shearer, on top of, in my opinion, one of the greatest, not greatest, let me rephrase that, prolific, potential, um, eye-opening manager. I think Eddie Howe is a great manager. And for some odd reason, I don't understand as to why players do not want to go play at Newcastle. And I don't know if it's him or if it's this Newcastle in general. I mean, it is right next to Wales. I mean, you're right on the border. You're farthest away from a lot of the Premier League teams,
I mean,
but
let's start with the fact that they didn't have a good season last year.
they did not. But who do they like? Who do they get rid of?
Well, now let's talk about that because They've gotten rid of, I mean, last summer, obviously, they sold Alexander Isak, bought Nick Voltamata. He's come in for 100 million and did nothing. Let's be frank. They have what I consider one of the better midfielders in the Premier League as of last season with Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, and then Joelinton. Well,
Mhm.
Tonali's gone. High chance, in my opinion. It looks like Bruno may leave
To Arsenal,
to Arsenal. Um,
he'd be
Anthony
killer there.
Gordon, Anthony Gordon gone now. He's to Barcelona, which is what it is. Whatever. Kieran Trippier now gone on a free.
Wolves.
Um, help, help. And they brought in some guys I've never heard of. They've bought 95 million euros worth of players.
Well,
Three dudes.
I know they brought in Stur. He came, I think, from PSV or Feyenoord. Feyenoord.
Here's my thing. I I think Newcastle are in a very dangerous spot right
I
now.
agree.
I think
Oh,
Newcastle.
they also let go of to Aston Villa.
You're doing that, but I don't know who they let go.
Ramsey.
Oh, I didn't know he went to Villa. He went to
Ramsey
Villa?
last season,
Oh,
last year. But my point is though, Ramsey went to I forget his first name. Oh my God, I'm blanking.
Jacob?
Thank you, Jacob Ramsey, because I know his brother. Jacob Ramsey left Newcastle last season to Aston Villa, which is interesting because I know we talked about Aston Villa, and I'm not trying to backwards, but I think it's worth talking about because these are transfers within the two clubs we're talking about. Jacob Ramsey, I think, is a great player in the midfield for Aston Villa in the future, even in that 10 spot. But now you look at Newcastle, they don't even have him anymore. So I'd argue Sean Sturr or Sean, we'll say Sim Sean, would almost replace someone like that. I mean, unless you've got the um, Bazumane Torre. Where did he come from?
I don't know. A lot
I
of money.
actually do not know who that is.
Here's my
I'm
thing. Are you
pretty
ready for the
knowledgeable with a lot of these players, but I'm not knowledgeable with
Are you
Torre. I
ready
don't
for
know
the
where he
first
came from.
hot take of the year of the show?
Yeah, what's up?
First hot take of the show. I think Newcastle are in serious danger
Of
of a
relegation?
relegation battle.
You know what?
They weren't far off last year, and now they've lost two of their better players. Let's say, let's put it in a world where they lose Bruno. I mean, you can't sit here and, I mean, don't get me wrong, they have a pretty solid
They
defense with
got
Botman.
Usala,
Okay.
the young. Just trying to give some positivity here because I know
But here's
your
my other
mentality
thing
is
with
on.
Newcastle. They had an influx of money when they got bought, right?
Yep.
Are they at a point in their club where all the guys they're buying are young, right? Nothing wrong with that. But is now the time to be doing that? Because last year they finished bottom half of the table and they weren't very good. They give Eddie Howe all the time in the world, and I get you love
Okay.
him as a manager.
I
Now
love
we're
him as a
losing
manager.
players. We're buying young guys to come in who are expected to fill pretty large shoes to a team that already struggled in the Premier League last year and finished bottom half of the table.
But they were also in the
To a
Prem, or they
deep
were also in the Champions League.
that well then that could prove our point with the Villas and the Brightons and the Sunderlands of the world who have to compete in Europe next season. Maybe that helps them that they're not in a competition. My point is, in a Premier League that is deep and anybody can beat anybody, as in if I was a Newcastle fan, I'm not saying they're going to get relegated. They
No, I
probably
hear you.
won't. I'm just saying, first hot take of the show, I think that there's a world where they have to fight to stay up,
There's a real possibility.
whether compared to competing for Europe. I think there's a better chance that they have to fight relegation than compete for Europe in the
I
table.
think there's a better. I think it's a hard. I don't even think Europe's part of it. I think finishing above top 10 is the issue or the
Yeah,
goal
I mean,
for
I
them.
don't think they will. Like, if I go
That's
through the
yeah,
league, I don't think they will.
absolutely.
They
I
don't have
mean,
the talent for it right now.
you look at. the numbers they put up last season and the season before, and think about how many goals were put up between Harvey Barnes, Guermez, Bruno, Izak, and Anthony Gordon.
Yeah.
And despite the 6-0 win they had against us back in the day, I don't think there's that was more of a joke because we lost 6-0 to them, I think it was at Newcastle, or 6-1. But you look at that squad on paper, and that is a championship team. I mean, look at your center backs. Shar is older than crap.
Well, he
He's
doesn't
32
start
years,
though.
30. What?
He don't start.
Who else? Who starts over him?
Botman and then Chow or Dow or whoever from Milan,
Oh,
the
Thiaw. I
German.
thought Thiaw plays at right side.
Well, maybe he does now, considering they don't have Trippier anymore. Well, no, they have Livermento at the right. He's
Yeah,
fine.
Livermento's decent. And then Lewis Hall's at the left. I
I'm
love
not saying
Lewis.
they're bad. I'm not saying
No,
they're bad.
but no,
I'm saying
no.
that they did not show any signs of anything special last season. They've lost some of what would some would consider their better players. If somebody also like a Bruno leaves and they're missing out on guys they're wanting this summer, I'm just saying that I think that there's a better possibility that that is a team that fights relegation than competes for Europe, maybe let
Yeah.
alone top 8 or 9. And
Where did
I
they
think
finish last season?
like 14th.
Was it?
It
Okay.
was around there, but all those teams were like a point apart.
14th, 13th, 12th, whatever it
But
was.
like they weren't good. I mean, they weren't. Like they have the talent. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying with how the summer's gone so far, if it continues to do that for Newcastle, let's say they sell another one or two guys, really aren't getting the guys they want to bring in, relying on some of these young guys to come in from other leagues to the Prim, have these great immediate impacts to compete because their goal is to compete for, a Europe spot, right? No doubt. I think that there's a world, may not happen, where they're competing or they're fighting for relegation, they get like 15th. And
Yeah.
then you go back to the drawing board and you're like, geez, how like, I mean, that's tough because they have the money. They had the money when they were bought. So it's a really
They have
interesting
arguably
conversation. It's a really
they have
interesting conversation.
arguably the most money in the Prem, according to some
But
reports.
nobody wants to play for them. Why is that?
But I think it's location.
That could be.
I think it's location. I don't think it's not attractive enough for me to go there. I'd rather go to an Aston Villa. I, I don't know why. I'm not saying personally I'd rather go to Aston Villa. I'm not saying that. It's just, Manzambi's a great example. I'd rather go to Aston Villa. I mean, he was accepted, or things were agreed amongst going to
Literally
Newcastle.
turned
Was
Newcastle down.
Yeah, literally said, you know what? Wait, hold up. Aston Villa just came in and said they would offer the same thing and want to offer me. I'm gonna go there instead. Why?
I'd go to Villa over Newcastle.
So you look at, like, is it the manager? Is it the philosophy behind what the project of the club could be? I don't know. I mean, Manzami could have just been like, I want to play Champions League football. I don't give a
Could be.
crap about whoever. I want to go play Champions League football. I'm gonna go play over there. Fair enough.
I
Um,
think not to go back to Villa, but I think that there will be a learning curve for him too. 100%. That price, his price drove
Manzambi.
his price. Yeah, his price was driven way up because of the World Cup. So like,
Mm-hmm.
let's pump the
100%.
brakes on the $70 million signing. He's only 20. He's got time. However,
He's only 20.
I think so.
Oh my
However,
God.
impact
He should have been like
wise,
50 or 45.
he's going to be somebody that I think will take a second. Not bad, but he could be an example of a guy coming in from another league that really struggles in the Premier League. Not saying he will, just an
I
example.
didn't know, and we can talk about this too. I didn't know Matt Target and so is Emil Kraft
Yeah,
both
they're
left
gone.
too.
Yeah. And like think they sold Sean Longstaff to Leeds, or did he come back to Newcastle?
You know what, dude? No, it wasn't Longstaff. They sold Elliot Anderson to Nottingham
Because they
Forest.
had to
That's what
sell.
screwed them.
Yeah, they had to sell.
They had to sell, and
Yep.
that's what screwed them. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot about him over at Newcastle because now he's at City. I mean, that took a year. It took 1 year, right?
No,
1 year to make him from how much he was bought for, what, 40 million
it was like
maybe?
35, I think.
Yeah, 117, brother.
You know,
So it's like it shows you how critical it is from just a season where you could be, oh my gosh, if we set this up the right way, and we could sacrifice this season. We could be in such good profits next season to where we could do so much more. Aston Villa is a great example. Now Newcastle's in another example. So I don't know what's going to happen between these teams. I did throw out what you said regarding Newcastle getting relegated, and I threw it out to some of my buddies in a little Tottenham chat, and I said, "Hey, Newcastle getting relegated, hot take. What do you guys think?" And one of the guys that is in the chat texted back. He goes, "I'd love to see it. I just don't think it's going to happen." But out of all the teams in the Prem, that would be the one team I would look at in terms of getting relegated. And I was like, back to what we were saying, I thought it was interesting that he kind of said the same thing we were talking about, because you got to really look at all the departures they've had amongst other teams as well. I mean, yes, Sunderland could finish in the bottom because they have injuries and so on and so forth. We don't know that what's going to happen, but from all the departures and the incomings of or arrivals, I should say, of all these clubs, you look at, I mean, put in Tottenham last season. Who did we buy last season? Archie Gray. No, take it back. That was 2 seasons ago. Last season we bought
What, like Matisse Tell,
Tell was bought, but he was already on loan. So Thomas Frank bought him,
Paulinho?
loan. But my point is, there's not much. So it's very interesting to see because I also will put this out there, and I'm curious if you agree. I think the competition from the championship is neck and neck with the bottom seven of the Prem.
When we get to our Premier League predictions, it's going to be interesting because the top four are it's just never black and white, right? Your top six are never your big six. Your bottom three are never just the three teams that come up. It very rarely happens. Like there's always a team or two that struggle. There's always some teams that go crazy and surprise us. Sunderland being that team that went crazy and surprised everybody, right? Tottenham, one of those teams that really struggled. Newcastle, one of those teams that really struggled. It's a West Ham, one of those teams that really struggled. Yes, people said, "Oh, they could get relegated," but wow, they were bad last year. And it's like it's just a really interesting dynamic with the Premier League. And we won't touch on every team when it comes to the transfer market, but at the end of the day, there are so many players being bought in the Premier League to come to play for in the Premier League. And Newcastle is a team that is really struggling to buy those players as these guys don't want to play for them. Yes, they've made purchases, but you cannot tell me in any way, shape, or form they've gotten better so far in the with the market, and they're a team that finished 14th. Just compare them to Tottenham and how much money Tottenham spent. Not saying that like just spending all the money in the world is the solution and solves all your problems.
Nick, compare him to Leeds. Leeds has no money, and
They've got
Newcastle
better
has
business.
all the money. And
Leeds
Leeds
already,
put 40 million on a goalkeeper and then a striker from Bosnia.
and they signed Harry Wilson on a free from Fulham, who's a solid player
Great
in the Premier
signing.
League.
Great
So like
signing.
that
Love that.
they've had a better year and they finished 15th or 16th or whatever they finished. Look, at the end of the day, Newcastle, in my opinion, are in trouble. I know we only have like 5 minutes left, but like holy long episode. Next time we plan episodes going forward, we're doing like one or two teams with the market. This is crazy. Granted, I knew it would be long with Tottenham. It's fun to talk about. We talk about it all night. I mean,
That's the
I've
whole
had an
point.
allergy attack this whole episode, but like other than that, like we're good. And so like safe to say, like Newcastle, in my opinion, have had one of, if not the worst summer out of any team in the Prem. I think that if this summer continues in this direction for them, they're in for a rude awakening in the Premier League, and I don't think they're going to be able to compete as well as they'd hoped. And I think that there's a real world where they fight for relegation. Not saying they're going to finish in the bottom three. I just think there's a real world where they finish between 12 and 16 compared to finishing between 5 and 9. So we'll see with Newcastle. I mean, I'll give you any final words before we close this, but
Last thing, and then we can close it. What do you think happens between this scenario? Newcastle relegation or Aston Villa top four?
which one do I think is more likely?
Yes. And like who we're talking about, Aston Villa top four, Newcastle relegation.
I mean, I'd have to say Villa top four.
Really? You think that was more likely than Newcastle relegation?
I mean, they've fought for it the last 2 years. I have no
Interesting.
reason to, even though I know they've sold players, but I have no reason to believe that's not what they're going to fight for again.
No,
I
I
just
I
think,
100% see that.
like, I would say, here's my thing. I don't think it's a quote unquote hot take, far-fetched thing for Villa to finish in fourth next season. I think it's a lot more far-fetched, more of a hot take for Newcastle to be relegated.
Fair.
I think that there's a better chance that Villa's a top four team next year. Not saying they're going to compete for the title, but I think there's a better chance they're top four than there is a better chance that Newcastle gets relegated. Because I don't think they'll get relegated. I just think that they've had a bad summer and they didn't have a good Premier League season last year, and they've lost some players.
Yep, get a
And
capitalize on it now.
there's a world where that's going to come back and bite you in the butt. And if they're not careful, we've seen what happens when you're not careful. You it could be they stick with Eddie Howe too long. It could be an
I love
injury.
Eddie though.
I know it could be an injury or two away. It could be Bruno being sold. All of a sudden, that midfield is weaker than weak.
Get
He
Lewis
takes a
Miley.
bad season from a center back. Like, who knows? Like, it's the Premier League. Like, it's the game of soccer. Like, wild stuff happens, injuries happen, like, things happen. Newcastle is not in a spot right now to be able to compete for a top eight or even probably top 10 spot, if you ask me. So,
Yeah.
I think there's a better chance to get relegated. But
And last question, and this will divert into maybe the next episode.
let's do it.
Okay. This is my final question. It's going to close it out. Amongst everything we've talked about, with the likes of, Bruno going to Arsenal, um, do you think there is a single-handed Premier League team that kind of escapes in terms of the top two race? Kind of like Arsenal did this past season. Or do you think it's going to be a more forefront, heavy on the foot, top 4, 5, 6 even fight for that Prem?
I have no reason to believe it'd be that. I have every reason to believe there's going to be one or two teams that separate themselves from the pack. I
Interesting.
Here's
I'm
my
just going to put
biggest.
it out there. I disagree with you, but go
That's
ahead.
fine. Here's my biggest thing. Yes, Pep is gone at Man City. Man City's good at Man City, and they're going to be tough. Arsenal's still Arsenal. Yes, they're now down Saliba for like half the year. Um, I obviously don't like Arsenal as a Tottenham fan. I don't love their antics and their tactics. I mean, I like that they press and they want the ball and all that, but I just don't kind of love the way they go about stuff. But it's whatever. Um, I don't think Arsenal will have as good of a season as they had last year.
Okay.
I
In what standpoint? Just points, goals,
No, just
injuries?
points. I just think they won some games last year that they like came
Probably
down.
shouldn't
Like
have.
just some stuff. Just not every bounce of the ball goes your way every season. They
At
did it
West
for
Ham?
Arsenal last season. I don't think it'll happen. Yeah, I don't think it'll happen this season.
Okay.
This upcoming season. I could be wrong. We have less than a minute. Holy crap. Point is, I say that out loud. I still think that there'll be a team or two that figures it out and
Okay.
races above everybody else. But maybe it's a close year. Who knows?
With the
That's
transfers,
it.
it could be, but I'm really
No.
excited to see what's going to happen. I think that puts us into the next episode too.
Yeah, I mean, we talk predictions next episode then. I mean, we can
Let's
we
keep
can dive
going.
into transfer, we talk predictions. We'll figure that out, obviously, not on this call, but that was Two Lads, One League. Massive episode for the third episode. Talked about three Premier League teams, transfer market, crazy, wild transfer market that is within the Premier League. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, all that fun jazz, and we'll see everybody next time.